Hey all, it's Matt, your average gamer. We've got a really good video today going over my top 10 bonk weapons and builds for Elden Ring. These are all really powerful and hit extremely hard, mostly focusing on strength as our main stat. Before we continue though, I'd like to make a quick mention to ExpressVPN, the secure VPN I trust. There's a discount link in the description below as well as 3 extra months free. It helps you keep your browsing more secure and supports the channel out as well. The first one up here at number 10 is the Troll's Hammer, a mainly physical weapon that is certainly of the bonk variety. This weapon does a little bit of fire damage and has a small amount of fade scaling. However, it is primarily a strength weapon and a heavy hitting one at that. By the way, I did this on my main character who's at a high level to rank these weapons, but I have 150 stats for each one as well. This is going to be a really fun, heavy-hitting video. I really do enjoy strength weapons. You're going to enjoy a lot of the builds that are mixed in here with the top weapons for me. This is all around a very, very powerful setup for a lot of these, and you can hit some bosses extremely hard with these high bonk weapons. For equipment, we have the Troll's Hammer, preferably plus 25. It has Troll's Roar on it that can be boosted by the Highland Axe passive, Raptor's Black Feathers, Ritual Swords Talisman, Roar Medallion, Shard of Alexander, Claw Talisman. Fire tier will boost this a little bit as well. Let's get into the 150 stats. For the 150 stats here, we're heavily invested in strength. You don't have to put much into faith, you just get a little bit of fire damage. The Troll's Hammer is mainly a strength weapon, and with these stats at 150, you're going to get a lot of damage out of it. The next bonk weapon that I have at number 9 is the Royal Greatsword. The Royal Greatsword has crazy good AR as it hits over 1,000 AR with high stats. Even at lower stats around 125 or 150, it can hit between 8 and 900. This Ash is really powerful. It's basically a frost version of Lion's Claw. At 150 for this build, you'll want around 50 strength and 40 intelligence. This is a powerful strength and intelligence weapon that can bonk with ease using the frozen, hard-hitting Ash of War. If you're okay taking additional damage and you want a lighter equipment load for some reason, the Spellblade set will actually boost this, although it doesn't give you good defense. For equipment, we have the Royal Greatsword plus 10, we have any seal, weightless seal is good, Raptor's Black Feathers, Ritual Swords Talisman, Magic Scorpion Charm, Shard of Alexander, Dragon Crest Great Shield Talisman, and then we have the Magic tier as well. This is the only one I don't have 150 stats for, but you'll want 50 strength, 40 intelligence, and around 50 vigor. The Ruins Greatsword is number 8 on my bonk weapon list. The Ash on the Ruins Greatsword scales mainly with weapon level, and the weapon gets an awesome S in strength scaling. Jump attacks in the Ash can do well in combo for a strength build. You can get solid range on the Ash while hitting for substantial damage, mixing in charged and jump attacks. Speaking of which, the charge attacks on the Ruins Greatsword has a special effect with extra gravity damage that doesn't cost FP. It does a good amount of damage as well. This is a great addition to add in during fights, making the Ruins Greatsword not only a solid strength build, but also a powerful bonk weapon and build too. This is one you have to try out if you haven't yet. It's also a good colossal weapon in the sense that it can build up a fairly decent amount of posture damage on your enemies too. You're going to see a posture break here on Godric. We're on New Game Plus 7. He is an early game boss, but even so, he has decent posture. We're able to break him and then ultimately take him down with the Ruins Greatsword. Yeah, I haven't done a build for this weapon on my channel in a while, so if you're looking for a Ruins Greatsword build, I think I got a decent one for you as far as damage goes, and this is another one that's going to be heavily invested in strength, as the magic part of it is very minimal for the Ruins Greatsword. Alright, in a second here, we're going to get into stats, equipment, everything you need to know. We've got 150 stats for you as well as equipment. We have the Ruins Greatsword plus 10, any seal will do, Raptor's Black Feathers, Ritual Swords Talisman, Dragon Crest Great Shield Talisman, Shard of Alexander, Claw Talisman for those jump attacks. Then we went for the defense tier and the charged attack tier as well. For those 150 stats, it's the same thing really here. You're going to heavily invest in your strength stat, but you're going to need a little bit of intelligence too, so we went for 60 strength, 20 intelligence, and around 55 vigor. If you didn't have the arcane points that I started with, you could get to 60 vigor. At number 7, I have my only smaller weapon for this list of bonk weapons, Marika's Hammer. The Ash is the definition of a bonk Ash, having massive power while slamming down for an AoE on the ground. Marika's Hammer is a strength weapon with a secondary stat in Faith. A powerful combination weapon that does a solid amount of stance damage as well. Marika's Hammer easily makes this list for me and is still one of my favorite strength and faith weapons in Elden Ring. If you build around it a bit, the Ash becomes ridiculously powerful. All of this footage is on New Game Plus 7 by the way, and all bosses have max HP. Yeah, and we're able to really beat up the Draconic Tree Sentinel here. It's not too hard with Marika's Hammer. You get that AoE on the ground, you get the holy damage, the strength combination, the stance damage. It all adds up to a lot of damage in general when it comes to Marika's Hammer. This is a very solid strength and faith weapon. Alright, and down goes the Draconic Tree Sentinel, and we're going to go over the build for one of my favorite strength weapons, as I mentioned, strength and faith weapons in Marika's Hammer. Extremely powerful when you use this Ash, and very spammable. Marika's Hammer plus 10 is what we have here. Raptor's Black Feathers if you're doing jump attacks. Ritual Swords Talisman, Sacred Scorpion Charm, Shard of Alexander, Dragon Crest Great Shield Talisman, and the Holy Tier will boost this as well. And for the 150 stats, by the way, this would be a similar version on the Royal Greatsword, except you'd go for Strength and Intelligence 50-40. For this, we have 50 Strength and 40 Faith, and then obviously we can get to 60 Vigor if I didn't have those extra points in Arcane. At number 6, I have the Rusted Anchor. The Rusted Anchor is a big weapon that could do a lot of damage. Jump and charge attacks can do a lot, as well as pierce damage. If you throw on something like Wild Strikes, you can do a crazy good amount of damage, and on heavy affinity, it works really well with an A in strength scaling. This is another one I definitely recommend trying out, as the pierce damage you get from a strength weapon can be a lot of fun to make combinations with, and with Wild Strikes you can chew through boss HP and absolutely destroy a ton of bosses in Elden Ring. For equipment, we have the Rusted Anchor, preferably plus 25, Wild Strikes, Heavy Affinity, Raptor's Black Feathers, any seal will do, Ritual Swords Talisman, Claw Talisman, Shard of Alexander, Dragon Crest Great Shield Talisman, and then you can use something like the Charge tier if you want to do additional damage with charged attacks, and then I had the Defense tier on as well. Let's get into the 150 stats. And for the 150 stats, this is again similar to some of the other ones that I've done, where we're just going to focus heavy on strength, because once you go into heavy affinity, you're going to get a lot of damage out of that for the Rusted Anchor. At number 5, we're going to be taking on Radahn with the Starscourge Greatswords. These are awesome for a strength build. They're absolutely in the bonk weapon category, and for me, they're incredibly powerful. The Ash has a powerful slam down that's primarily physical damage, and then it has a magic AoE as well that can be boosted by the Roar Medallion and Highland Axe passive. These Greatswords also have reasonable weight at 20, giving you 2 Colossal type weapons for the weight of 1. This is primarily a strength weapon with minimal intelligence scaling. The slam down on the Ash, as I mentioned, is pretty much all physical, as well as the regular hits with it too. The Starscourge Greatswords are a powerful combination, and if you're looking for a powerful stance weapon, especially early in the mid game, not too far into the game for these weapons, you should try these out definitely. They also do additional damage to gravity type enemies like Radahn here, another bonus for these heavy hitting swords. These have a really fun and enjoyable Ash of War too. The Ash of War on this is quite fun because it has 2 parts to it. You get that magic AoE, and then you get the slam down on top of that, and when you pull it off, you can end up getting massive damage for a lot of the bosses in the game. These are solid weapons, power stance with a weight of 20, as I mentioned, completely reasonable for the damage you're getting. By the way, I wanted to mention real quick, if you're not subbed and you've been following to this point, definitely be sure to hit that subscribe button. You're not going to want to miss out on all the Elden Ring content. I also wanted to mention that everything in the video, as usual, is going to be timestamped for your convenience, so if you want to come back and try any of these builds, any of these big bonk weapons, feel free. The timestamp's in the description below and has everything that you need. I try to do really detailed descriptions as well in my videos, and most of my videos. For the list videos, they're more generic descriptions in the sense of they're just talking about it, but when I do individual builds, I usually put all the equipment and everything in there as well. For this one though, if you go into the timestamps, you'll find all the equipment builds and everything that you need. And now that we took down Radahn with his own weapons, we're going to go over equipment for this awesome build and setup for the Starscourge Greatswords. And for equipment here, we have Starscourge Greatsword plus 10, Highland Axe for the passive, Raptor's Black Feathers, Ritual Swords Talisman, Roar Medallion, Shard of Alexander, Dragon Crest Great Shield Talisman, then the magic tier will boost this a little bit as well. Yeah, this is definitely a powerful build, and much like the Ruins Greatsword, this kind of is similar in that way. You're going to need just a little bit of intelligence, don't worry too much about that, and then you can go for 60 strength, 20 intelligence there, 55 to 60 vigor. You have a solid setup and powerful build. At number 4, I have the Great Stars. Dual wielding Great Stars are extremely powerful, and heavy affinity particularly. You'll get a little bit of bleed build up too, and you can get in some serious stance damage by power stancing these. Jump attacks are especially powerful with double great stars, and it absolutely fits the high-powered BONK build list. These are also really solid if you throw them on Occult Affinity. If you're looking for more bleed and damage as well, that's a solid setup for them. Let's get into equipment here. We have the Great Stars, both preferably plus 25. I didn't really use the Ash. Whatever Ash you feel like using for this one. Raptor's Black Feathers, Ritual Swords Talisman, Dragon Crest Great Shield Talisman, Shard of Alexander, Claw Talisman, and then we have, didn't need the Fire tier, I think that was left over for something else, the Charge Attack tier 2. By the way, Craig Blade isn't bad with these at all as well, especially in heavy affinity. And for the 150 stats, a similar look here. You're going to heavily invest in strength because we're putting them in heavy affinity, and you're going to get a lot of damage out of them and posture damage as well by dual wielding them. For number 3, I have the Great Mace with Prayerful Strike, which is becoming one of my favorite Ashes of War. This one you can put in heavy or sacred affinity for awesome damage. You can get serious stance damage from the Ash, and the weapon itself is certainly bonk worthy. The Great Mace you can also get in Liurnia of the Lakes fairly early in the game. Jump attacks if you're dual wielding these can give you a lot of stance damage as well as damage in general. The Great Mace is a solid choice for hitting stuff hard as a strength build, so be sure to try this one out. Also with Prayerful Strike, which combos well here, can consistently heal you back HP and keep you alive in those tight situations, in those close situations. Prayerful Strike is incredibly useful. Yeah, when it comes down to the wire and you have something like Prayerful Strike or you have something like the Blasphemous Blade, getting healing off of your Ash of War can be very useful. When you're running down maybe on your health flask or whatever, you have these Ashes of War, these two powerful Ashes of War, Prayerful Strike and the Blasphemous Blade, that can both heal you for a significant amount of HP. And we're going to end up ending the fight with the Tree Sentinels here using mainly Prayerful Strike, although I do mess up a little bit at the end here, but Prayerful Strike is always the good bet because, again, you're getting that healing back on each one, the slam down, and the intense amount of posture damage, literally the crazy amount of posture damage you get with each hit on Prayerful Strike. You can posture break a lot of the bosses in the game fairly easily. Very powerful Ash. For equipment, we have the Great Mace and Sacred Affinity, and then we have Prayerful Strike on it. Any seal will do. Raptor's Black Feathers, Ritual Swords Talisman, Sacred Scorpion Charm to boost the holy damage, Shard of Alexander, Dragon Crest Great Shield Talisman, and the Holy tier will also boost you as well. Let's get into the 150 stats for this one. For the 150 stats here, since we went with Sacred Affinity, this was more a Faith build. You can do it in Heavy Affinity as well, but if you look at this setup here, you can take advantage of that B in Faith scaling and get a lot out of the Great Mace. The last two on the list are the best in my opinion, both shining bright for strength builds and hard hits. At number 2, I have GUTS Greatsword with Lion's Claw. This does a really good amount of damage and is one of the best weapons and Ash combinations in Elden Ring. Many will tell you Lion's Claw on Guts is easy mode, and it absolutely is. It not only does great damage, it does around 35 to 40 stance damage on each use of its Ash as well. This is a powerful combo in Heavy Affinity and easily makes the number 2 spot on the BONK weapons and build list. Seriously, if you haven't tried Lion's Claw on the GUTS Greatsword, if you're just starting out, by the way, this is something you can get early too. You can get GUTS Greatsword fairly early, Lion's Claw early as well if you can take on the Lion Guardian, and you'll end up with a very powerful build that can pretty much carry you through the entire game, and fairly easily at that. Alright, now we're going to be getting into equipment for one of my favorite builds in the entire game of Elden Ring, and we have the Heavy GUTS Greatsword with Lion's Claw. Any seal will do. Raptor's Black Feathers, Ritual Swords Talisman, Claw Talisman, Shard of Alexander, Dragon Crest Great Shield Talisman. Then I threw in the Charge tier if you're going to do some charged hits, and the Defense tier as well. Let's get into the 150 stats. The 150 stats are similar to a lot of the builds in here that are strength focused. If you have 70 strength, you two-handed, you basically have 99 strength with a 1.5 times bonus. You're going to get a ton of damage out of it. Number 1 is the most bonk weapon in the entire game, the Giant Crusher. This weapon is so hard hitting that when buffed up a ton, it can one-hit many of the bosses in the game. Its AR is insanely high, giving some of the best damage you'll get from a weapon in Elden Ring. You have the endurance to dual wield these if you're using Great Jar's Arsenal. You can get a lot of damage out of it that way too, but generally 1 is enough. Buff this up to extreme levels and watch bosses disappear in a single bonk. This is easily number 1. If you haven't used it yet, now's the time to try out the Giant Crusher. By the way, if you saw all the buffing on screen, I'm going to leave the basic buffs for this, the buffing order in the description below the video so that you guys can see that and so that I can talk over this instead of talking about the buffing. This is for the heavy affinity one. There's a little bit of a different order for the fire crusher, which you'll see next. And as you can see, we knocked the magma worm down in one hit. We got him in the head, which obviously takes additional damage, but in one single bonk, he went down. By the way, if you haven't pulled off any one-hits in the game yet, it's something that you're definitely going to want to try. This is going to be the buffing order, by the way, here if you want to watch on screen for the Fire Crusher. It's a variant on it for enemies to take additional fire damage or have 0 fire resistance, and the last one was the Heavy Affinity. But long story short, one-hitting stuff, a lot of fun. Yeah, you can't really go wrong here. We're going to low health proc, by the way, for most situations here. And then if you use Madness, you can proc the Black Dumpling, which will stack with everything. That'll give you extra 10% damage for a minute. And then we'll continue the low health proc. We're going to be using the Commander Standard for this one in combination with Flame Grant Me Strength. Now, Commander Standard does do 5% more than Golden Vow, but keep in mind it's shorter acting. Flame Grant Me Strength is also shorter than Hellish Shabiri or Blood Boil, but in this case, since we're using the Fire Crusher, it's going to boost us more. And then we have the Twin Bird Kite Shield for additional low health damage. We Poison proc, use Seppuku, and then we can one-hit this tree avatar in a single bonk. And that was for 22,000 damage, and on the Magma Worm we got 17,000 damage. Pretty impressive with the damage numbers there, and obviously they were both in a single hit. You can do that to a lot of the enemies in the game with this buffing system. Now I'm going to show the 150 stats. I did not forget to put all the information on the equipment. That's going to be in the description below with the buffing order. There's just so much to it if you want to try to one-hit something that I'm going to include all of that in the description, everything you need, and then the buffing order as well. Thanks for watching this one, as this sums up my top 10 bonk weapons and builds ranked in Elden Ring. This was a really fun one to do, as strength builds can be awesome to use. If you're not on the Discord, definitely be sure to join it. It's in the link in the description below. And if you're not subbed and you love overpowered PvE builds, be sure to check out all the awesome builds on my channel. Thanks for watching. As always, I will catch you guys there.